Hey everybody, this is Eden Maybon from Plutonium Astrology. So today I want to take a look at the conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune that is forming right now in the sign of Pisces. It's actually going to be making a perfected aspect tomorrow as a conjunction. And I want to take that through the 12 rising signs so you know what to expect. Now, be sure to stay till the end of the video because we're going to be previewing the next transit, which is going to be Mars ingressing into the sign of Pisces as well. All right, let's dive in. Pun very much intended here. Let's define the archetypes first. So we have Jupiter. Now, in ancient Mesopotamia, Jupiter was a god of breath, life, and rain. He was a god of abundance and growth, cohesion, and union. So this was a very beneficial type of god, as you can imagine. In the worldly context, Jupiter can point or sign to such things like labor unions, treaties, laws, the judicial systems, teachers, gurus, these types of things. Now, there is a shadow side to Jupiter. Each planet or each archetype will, of course, have some positive sides to them and will also have a negative side. The shadow side is going to be things like Jupiter overdoing things too much, or rather, maybe too much is a bad thing. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Something like that. So you can overdo it a little bit, especially with the combination of Neptune there. But let's get into the archetype now of Neptune. Okay. So for this archetype, I rely on the kind of events that were happening around the time that Neptune was discovered to tell me what this god could represent, because this god is a god we learn about from the modern time going forward. We don't have a ancient treatise on this god or the archetype that this god is representing. So for Neptune, we really have to look, what were the events that surrounded the discovery, and use it sort of as an omen of first appearance in the world. Okay. So first of all, the planet was discovered using a telescope. So you cannot see this planet without using a telescope, or you can't see it with the naked eye, rather. So of course, automatically, this must mean that there is some symbolism towards things that are invisible, things that blend in with the larger whole, almost like a camouflage. And this is because Neptune was actually seen, but they didn't realize that it wasn't a planet. They thought that it was a star. So it's sort of blended in with the background, right? So Neptune can sign to things that potentially blend in. We also have, because it was discovered using a telescope, we could say that perhaps Neptune is signing towards something that you really need some external tool to help you manifest what it is. You can't do it just without anything. You need a help or a tool to help you get that into your sight. Numb. Oblivion, unaware, tiny, was very small, and it was unconscious to the mind. Now, the story deepens here because after the discovery of Uranus was being pulled by gravity. Its orbit had like a perturbation in it, and so they knew that something was beyond it, pulling on it. So I personally think that Neptune's significations could be expanded to a hidden influence that sort of pulls on you, right? And they had to calculate, they had to use math. So I actually use words like calculating, made aware that something else should be there, groping in the dark. Everybody was searching for this thing. Mathematical prediction, a hidden influence. Now, it got to the point where along the journey of discovery for Neptune, there was actually a big race. They knew it should be there. So everybody around the world, all of the astronomers and scientists involved were trying to race to discover this thing. So there's an essence almost that could have something like an Easter egg hunt or like a great race. Reminds me of a Mad, 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 Mad World, one of those older classic movies. There was some competitive drama. And I like to think of all of this sort of almost being encapsulated in an idea like fishing. It seems like they were kind of fishing for it, which is very apropos for a planet of the ocean, right? And then finally, discovery, which bridged the conscious to the unconscious. It was like the bridge. The telescope was like we couldn't see it, or we weren't aware of it, and then we bridged ourselves to something beyond the conscious visible. And then we go into things like unitive, abstract. Why abstract? Abstract because they used math to actually discover it. Math is sort of abstract symbolism, right? Pareidolia, a word that means you sort of see patterns or symbols in everything around you. One of my favorites, transoceanic. Transoceanic, because there were several things that went back and forth over the ocean, messages, because at that time there weren't like airplane travel, or obviously like the internet or something. So transoceanic, things were going back and forth over the ocean. It was the mode of travel, you could say, at that time. Conflation. Now at the time Neptune was discovered, it was making a conjunction. Well, Saturn was making a conjunction to Neptune at the time that they discovered Neptune. So I have in my notes, conjoined with treachery, evil spirit, or consequences. Why these words? Treachery, because Saturn can be treacherous. It can be deception. Neptune, most people, we sort of equate this planet archetypally with something deceptive, right? Well, I actually think that's because it was conjoined with a planet that already meant deception or treachery. So I have treachery, evil spirit, because in the house scheme, or the places scheme of ancient astrology, the 12th place is the place where the planet Saturn has its joy, and it's named the place of evil spirit. So I have conjoined with treachery, evil spirit, or consequences, because Saturn is a planet of necessity and responsibility. All right. Deception, manipulation, cover-ups. There was actually a big cover-up with the discovery of Neptune between colleagues and different nations. There was some trauma. There was some, like just this poetic phrase, withering despotism. This is just something that I was being poetic about, but it seemed like the drama led to some despotic kind of moves on some of the people involved, and it withered them. It eventually they got overthrown, and one person involved actually ended up drowning. So I have drowning. Turbulence. Why turbulence? Because Neptune has some of the fastest winds on the actual planet. The winds are some of the fastest in the entire solar system on any planet. Inundated, overwhelmed. Fairy tale. Okay, here's a little bit of a play on words. Television. Again, it took a telescope. It took an extension, a tool that extended your vision. Television, but also TV, right? Enchantment, spirit world, surrender. That one really comes from a teacher of mine, Achyuta Bhava Das. Imagination and intuition. And I actually think that this intuition might be very like a yin intuition. Okay, so these are the significations for Neptune. Now, these mostly are kind of my own fashioning and a little bit mixed in with just what everybody already kind of would say about it. But I just wanted to tease it out a little bit in more detail. Okay, so now on to the aspect that is occurring. Jupiter is overcoming Neptune in the sign of Pisces. And so we have a blending of these two archetypal energies. And what does that represent in the birth chart? This cycle will evolve and play itself out over the next, well, it won't, this conjunction won't happen in this same sign until March of 2023 2025. So that is a long time from now. All right. And let's see. Okay. Just real quick, I want to go through some historical notes here. The last time that this happened in the same sign where Jupiter was conjoining Neptune in the sign of Pisces was actually in the first half of the year 1856. And so I just want to give you a few fun historical things that I found for this. And I've actually, in kind of a nerd type of way, I've combined or categorized these brief little events into what I call archetypal combo or combinations. So I've sort of categorized them because there were a few different things that kept coming up and I started seeing a pattern with some of these. So what I have is archetypal combo number 1. I'm calling this the lost at sea archetype. Okay. In this year, 3 merchant ships were lost at sea, and this equated to nearly 1,000 people perishing in total. So that's archetypal combo number 1, the lost at sea archetype. Archetypal combo number 2, the righteous ideological struggle archetype. Okay, this one's kind of fun, but you have Jupiter, you have Neptune, it's in Pisces, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of zeal, there's a lot of hope and feeling of justice here. Some of the ways this played out in 1856 was the America was in civil and political turmoil over which states would be pro-slave and which states would be free states in America at that time. So that's what we were going through in America at that time. Also, the California gold rush started just 8 years earlier, and this was right as Neptune was ingressing into the sign of Pisces. And by the time of this conjunction, 8 years later, there was the re-establishing of a vigilante group that was tasked and was sanctioned by the state governor to restore law and order, but in a vigilante way. And they went around hanging people and throwing people out of government office and things like this. And because the gold rush had brought so many people into San Francisco that the police and the enforcement was not able to keep up with the amount of people that moved in overnight, as it were. So a vigilante group was created, and then at the time of this transit was actually reinstated. Again, another Piscean kind of a word, like a reunifying or reinstating. What was it doing? It was tasked to bring back law and order. Very Jupiterian words, right? And its membership grew. So we have Neptune kind of being really expansive there as well. Okay, archetypal combo number 3. I call this the Union archetype. There was just a lot of things happening. 223 miles of the North Carolina Railroad is finally completed at this time. And there were fraternities and universities springing up and being established all over the country. Okay, archetypal combo number 4. We have the treaty archetype. Now, this one's kind of positive. A treaty is signed ending the Nepalese-Tibetan War. And okay, this is really good because we're seeing something right now. The Paris Treaty, as it was known, ended the Crimean War. Wow. Well, that's certainly happening right now, isn't it? Maybe we'll get a treaty that ends the current conflict in the Crimean area. Archetypal number 5, the striking out on faith archetype. 500 Mormons leave Iowa City and head west to Utah, carrying all of their possessions in 2-wheeled handcarts. Actually, I have a relative that was actually on one of those migrations. Archetypal combo number 6, the defining boundaries archetype. This is kind of small, but was also kind of big. The great, okay, I'm going to try to say this word, trigonometrical survey of India is completed, revealing the height of Mount Everest, defining it as the highest mountain. So this is really interesting. There was another thing that happened where um, there was land borders around Japan and Russia were actually being figured out at this time. Didn't add this in there, but that was another thing. So interestingly enough, Neptune is also accused of being dissolving boundaries, but what I found was actually almost the opposite, where boundaries were almost measured or defined, reported, surveyed, so almost defined. All right, and now let's move on to rising sign delineations. Let's take this conjunction that's happening tomorrow through the 12 rising signs, and let's just see what we get with some of this stuff. So, of course, these are just, we're just making some guesses here. But if you are an Aries rising, this conjunction is happening in your 12th house. And I sort of think that this could be something like a feeling of real hope for healing yourself, specifically healing yourself in some way. And this might happen where you sort of maybe isolate yourself, but for the purposes of doing some kind of beautiful healing. You could potentially be lost in all sorts of beauty or desire. And this could be kind of healing. It also could be something that could potentially be overdone, maybe too much desire, too much sex, or some bad habits that sort of lead you astray in some way. Now, this house does have a connotation with hidden enemies. So there could be something like hidden enemies that are beautiful, or like a enemy that's like a drug, that's a beautiful drug. So watch out for a little bit of things that are so beautiful that they sort of are not good for you. All right. If you are a Taurus rising, this conjunction is happening in your 11th house of goals and allies. Well, this is really good. Jupiter finds its joy in this house. So I'm wondering if there are something like overseas alliances, or you getting involved with groups overseas, or people overseas, acquiring a lot of opportunities. I see that potentially being something that's real hopeful, where you're just either really participating in a lot of action right now, and networking, acquiring some opportunities, talking to people, getting out there, doing stuff, joining groups that you're interested in, maybe gaining supporters, growth in some type of ambition that you have, and working with other people about it. There could be some, if you overdo it in this sense, there could be some unrealistic expectations of friends, of your friends, or maybe they have unrealistic expectations of you. Something about overblown goals, something that's just a little too much, maybe in that way. All right, if you're a Gemini rising, this is happening in your 10th house, a house of actions, practice, and career. So one of the archetypes, you might strike out on faith. How do you strike out on faith in the 10th house? Well, strike out on faith on a career. You could have some big imagination about what you could do. You could say, oh my God, why didn't I realize I want to become an astronaut? I'm going to write, Elon Musk an email right now and sign up to SpaceX or something big, and so maybe you join with some big corporation, or maybe you join with a big company or trade union, or something like this that seems really like just amazing. There could also be resolution or a contract for something that was hostile in a work situation. Let's see. Now, you could get lost in a way that affects your reputation at work. Maybe there's something that you're overdoing that sort of, you sort of lose something in a reputation or a work situation by just overdoing some goal or ambition or authority that you're wielding around. Let's see. You might have success. There might be some modicum of success that you're gaining, or that you've already gotten, but you're not totally clear on what it actually leads to or what it means, or some ambiguity around maybe some of these things involving this. You could also discover a hidden passion or practice. I could see that. And it could be maybe a sense where a career is lost at sea. All right, Cancer rising. This is happening. This conjunction is taking place in your ninth house of religion and higher education, among other things. So in a place where Jupiter is a religious planet and this is a religious house, of course, you could see something like maybe having some hope or rediscovering of a religious fervor or a religious community or something like this. Maybe you go back to university and study something, further your education. This could be maybe you're joining a legal or religious institution. Maybe you're receiving accreditation. Maybe you've gotten a degree in something and there's a big relief from all of this and some big hope and imagination, you know. Of course, with this house, you could take trips overseas. You could take some kind of spiritual pilgrimage. And this house also has to do with law. So maybe you're actually overcoming a legal, something involving with maybe academic and legal things together, or maybe just purely something legal. But maybe there's some kind of resolution to something involving something legal. Now, I suppose you could, the way you could overblow this or overdo this is just on principles or some of your guiding philosophies, where you could just go too much with some of these belief systems that you're maybe thinking about right now. So I guess just watch out for that. Now, I do think that there will be some discovery of something very profound that you just understand in a deeper way. This house is all about deeper meaning. So this seems like you would just have almost like revelations of foresight or vision or divine, wisdom or knowledge coming through. All right, if you are a Leo rising, this conjunction is taking place in your eighth house of taxes, death, depth, and inheritance. So what does that mean? I think this really could be taking a leap of faith. In a way, maybe you're paying off a loan, or maybe you're getting into a loan, but there's some leap of faith here, and it has something to do with either paying something off and being really relieved and feeling much better, or maybe really wanting something and being like, okay, I can do it. I'm going to get this loan. I'm going to buy the house. I'm going to go for it. Something like that. I could see this being like maybe a promotion at work, and then you get more responsibility and you're more entangled in client assets or stock markets or whatever it is that maybe where you're having to be responsible or manage resources of a business or company, some large organization or job or something like this. I could see this being a resolution of a child custody dispute, or a financial matter. Maybe you're resolving something that you owed. I can see this as obviously an inheritance from a death, hopefully not. And probably right now during tax season, this could be your tax return coming in. I would say the way to be careful with this one, if you're Leo rising, is be careful not to lose somebody else's money, or a spouse's money, especially if you want something so bad that you just are willing to go into debt for it, or gamble or something like that. All right. If you're a Virgo rising, this conjunction is happening in your seventh house of consummation and ecstasy. Okay, so now we already know that the seventh place is consummation or ecstasy in the ancient literature, but we also have this very sensual sign with a very sensual planet. So this is a really sensual combination right here. I could see this being a leap of faith in a marriage or proposal. Something like that could be coming through right now. Completing something and feeling really good. This is the place where things got completed or finalized. And this is an aspect where things were completed, resolved, or finalized. There could be redemption of that you're having with an open enemy. This is the place of open enemies. So This could be something that's somebody that's working against you, or trying to win against you. And with this combination, you saw people both sort of being very like moralistic on both sides. So like in the example of where you had the pro-slave states, and then you had what they called the free states, which were anti-slave states. But both people on this ideological spectrum thought that they had the moral high ground. So I could see this being sort of maybe you win the moral high ground in a legal situation, or maybe you lose it. So this could be the finality of something like that, one way or another. Depends on what it is, but it might have something to do with something moralistic, I suppose. This could be having a beautiful ending of something, very beautiful, but it's done, but it's okay, and maybe it feels good that way. Um, Maybe something like a long distance relationship might not survive. Some relationship that's over the seas, that goes through is lost at sea kind of a thing, which would be unfortunate, but something to that effect maybe. And also we could have the joining of some kind of partnership, firm, charity, union, something like this in this place. All right, if you are a Libra rising, we have this conjunction happening in your 6th house of work, health, and strife. I'm getting the real sense with Libra risings, especially with Libra risings being somebody that can work with a lot of different people and sort of understand everybody's like what everybody needs and things like this. I'm getting the image of like the 6th house has to do with like something that you're working really hard on, something that just seems to be just drudging along, and it's not easy work, it's hard work. And maybe with this benefic combination coming in, there's something like you figure out, or you imagine a way to sort of bring people into the project that can help you in some way, or you network or unionize the project or something like this, and you sort of work out a way to sort of make it where maybe you get some help or relief in this way. Now, this house also is quote unquote a bad house that has to do with strife or conflict. And there are things that were happening historically with this combination of planets making a conjunction that also has a little bit of a connotation of conflict, disruption, or war, or strife. So be a little bit careful with this, especially if it comes to something that you're doing from a moralistic or ideological standpoint. You could maybe overdo it and almost create strife when you're trying to create union with something like this. There could be the renewal of energy, just where you're feeling re-energized to take on something that's going to be a lot of work. Yeah, I think that's about it for Libra rising. Okay, if you're Scorpio rising, this is the other really sexual combination right now, specifically about pregnancy. This conjunction is taking place in your 5th house of pregnancy, fun, and creativity. So there's something creative happening now. I know Scorpio rising people are very creative. A lot of Scorpio risings are very creative people in general or regularly. So I think that this is a tremendous force of energy where you just can imagine and put some massive new creative force into action here in the 5th house. And I could also, of course, obviously see the energy flowing through just making babies. So if you want babies, this is going to be good. If you don't, you got to channel this into some, music or art or whatever you like to create. This could be the where we're going to renew romance in a relationship or something like this, renew the passion in the love life. I think the only danger with this one is it's the 5th house, so we got to be careful not to overdo the desires and the lust and things that are just too indulgent. You could say you could sort of get lost at sea maybe with some of this energy, just overwhelming you. Scorpios are very passionate, so it's like there's no limit to the passion. So just be careful. You might have to think ahead. What is the limit to the passion? Because Neptune is just, there is no limit, right? So just be a little careful with that one. All right, Sagittarius rising. This conjunction is taking place in your fourth house of home and family. Okay, first of all, let's just do the traditional one with this, which is going to be your house is going to get flooded. But it might be just something like your home or property. I don't know, maybe you buy some property near the ocean all of a sudden. Maybe you go on a trip overseas with the family. Maybe you put in a swimming pool, or I don't know. Maybe you just irrigate your property and water your trees. Um, Maybe you buy a boat and you have this beautiful vision of sailing around the world, and the boat is your home and you're on the ocean now. Something like this. I could also see discovering something like, I wonder if you're gonna dig up treasure in your backyard. Or it could be a treasure that is like, you find a long lost relative or family member, or you do a DNA test and you figure out what your DNA is. Something like this, where there's riches to be found here or discovered here. Um, Maybe adopting a child from overseas that expands your family. Or maybe it's just having a lot of great art or religion in the home right now, something like this. All right, of course, it could be remodeling the home, things like this. All right, Capricorn rising. This is happening in your third house of daily activity, ritual, your environment. This is, I had a little bit of trouble wrapping my mind around this one. I do know a Capricorn rising, and so I sort of was trying to think about this person when I was coming up with some of these, but it's something like, there's a real imagination either in that you're seeing now. You're having some sort of really hopeful, big imagination, that maybe a leap of faith with something that has to do with uh, like maybe something you do in a routine or a ritual or with the family all the time, or maybe it has something to do with the job, and maybe something changes in the job and this changes the routine. But there's something happening with probably the way that you think about just your mundane day-to-day life. It could be something like you're getting really into some study of culture, some religious storytelling, or wisdom teachings. Could just be that there are new opportunities in your daily life. Could be a new car that you buy, a new job. Could be that you find a long lost sibling, something like this. I'd be curious. So if there's any Capricorn risings out there that want to put in the comment section what happened during this time, I would love to see what it is that this is happening. There could be something that is lost overseas. I don't know what this would be, but an opportunity, a person that moves away, something like this. And this sort of changes or makes you discover something new in how you're doing everything every day. Um, all right, Aquarius rising. This is funny. I have a story about my 7-year-old. So I wanted to, he's an Aquarius rising, so I wanted to see how this was affecting him, but he's a child. So a lot of the times it's a little bit harder to see, but this is taking place in Aquarius. If you're an Aquarius rising, it's taking place in your second house of finances. Well, my son doesn't have finances except for his dollar or two that he does when I can actually get him to do the dishes every 4 months or something. But he comes up to me and he says, "Dad, I'm shooting you with a potato gun." And I went, "Eureka, that's it. It's a toy, right? It's possessions." He's thinking about a possession that he's imagining, right? It's in his imagination. It's a possession, and it has to do with food, which is all relative to the second house for him. So, but obviously, the place of finances, and so I guess this is one almost seems more simple, where maybe there's some big thing that you're ready to buy, some big investment that you're ready to do, some big asset that you're ready to take on, or something like this, and you're going to pull a trigger on it. And you got to be careful because this I could see this being almost a windfall, but I could also see it being a windfall and then a loss, or a loss and then a windfall. This one has this energy of like, man, you can either win the lottery and lose the ticket, or something like this. You could just invest in a large stock, or some big company, and maybe it's not a bad investment, but it's just the signification is pointing to some organization that's big because of the whole Jupiter and Neptune thing. You could just be eating a lot of food. I think you might possibly take a survey of your net worth, of your total like assets, or what you have. This is going back to this whole survey of Mount Everest, where they were like, we don't know what the height of this mountain is. Let's find out once and for all. And they did it. So maybe this is like a survey, or like where you're really going through the books and finding out what do you have, something like this. All right. And last, and of course, never least, we have Pisces rising. This is happening in your first place of health, and what was known as the steering wheel of your life. So the first place is where you steer your life from. I could see you discovering your own beauty, having something to do with the redemption of health, or a restoration of health. I could see this having to do with a renewal of belief in yourself, or some discovery of identity, where you discover there's something really wise, or spiritual, or religious, or something, where you reassociate who you are in comparison to these Jupiterian types of things, such as belief, or religion, or morality, or justice. Or I wonder if it's something like, all of a sudden you're like, I am a soldier for justice. It's like, this is who I am now. Like something like this, right? I can also see this where you meet somebody, even though this is the first place. I could see this, maybe you meet a teacher, meet a guru, something like this. Could even be meet a partner, but a partner that has is very jovial, or something like this. The way you could overdo this, I guess you could just overdo this in just being too crazy in your personality, just being too zealous, or too self-righteous, or something like this, or just too moralistic, maybe, in just your overall personality. I don't think this will happen, but I don't think you'll become a tyrant for beauty, or something like this. But I'm just going through some of the combinations of possibility here. Losing yourself in zeal, and I'm wondering if there is anything with traveling overseas and just wanting to be careful doing that, because there were, what was it? I guess it was the archetypal combination number 1, where there were just sometimes it was just treacherous, just going across seas, and that's that whole Neptune thing. So if you're going overseas, I guess be careful. Probably that might be a silly thing to delineate, but yeah. Okay. So that takes us to the end of the Jupiter Neptune conjunction, through the signs and the history and all that. All right, so I told you I would tell you about the next video that's coming up. So we've got Mars ingressing into Pisces. This is happening on the 14th. I'm just going to go ahead and leave you some keywords. Now, what we'll be doing in that video is mostly the same what we did in this one, where we're going to take this ingress through the 12 rising signs, so you can kind of see what it is. Now, because Mars is ingressing into Pisces, and this video is also about the conjunction in Pisces, it's going to have a lot of the same things, but it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to give you some keywords here. We have saviors and sacrifice, union and independence, expansion and action, trust and domination, the breath of life and death, eroticism and sexual intercourse, inheritances and plundering, rating, competition and courage, religion and war, law and defense, teachers and generals, discontent and desire, And then I have a few words where I take these. I found one word to signify both Mars and Jupiter, kind of just as one word. Things like firemen, a Joan of Arc kind of character, Knights of the Templar kind of character, the concept of flagellation. I have things like a reunited soldier, a holy war, law enforcement, like police, court martials, delusions and impulsiveness, saints and martyrs, confirmation and confrontations, good intentions and misfortune, a quick recovery, a quickening of spring, frustrated, impatience for the future. Okay, everybody, that is the preview for Mars ingressing into Pisces. So hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave some comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you soon. Bye.